Recently, scientists made an astonishing discovery that might solve Stonehenge's mystery. They found something hidden deep within the DNA of Stonehenge's Sarsen rocks, the huge monolithic ones, and it might reveal why our Neolithic ancestors designed and built this thing in the first place. Over the years, scientists have been scratching their heads trying to figure out where the huge Sarsen rocks came from. For years, they believed they came from a quarry just 15 miles away from the site, known as Marlborough Downs. At this site, they found similar minerals to the ones that make up the Sarsen rocks, but it turned out there was more to this story than they thought. The understanding of how Stonehenge was built is always changing. Scientists need to really travel back in time to uncover its mysteries. Where did the rocks come from? How were they carried? Why was the site built? You see, the Stonehenge site, located at Salisbury Plain in England, is made up of two main types of stone. There are the super heavy Sarsens and the lighter and smaller bluestones. The Sarsens each weigh about 25 tons. That's as much as 3 African elephants stacked together. The heaviest Sarsen stone, called the heel stone, weighs 30 tons all by itself. Together, the Sarsens make that iconic outer ring circle. Inside that circle, that's where you'll find the bluestones. The naming might seem a bit misleading since they're not really blue. They have a bluish tinge to them when they are freshly broken, hence the name. These smaller rocks probably came from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, which is about 150 miles away from Stonehenge. They're a bit lighter than the Sarsens, but still pretty heavy. The altar stone, which is classified as a bluestone, is the heaviest one, weighing around 6 tons. Its original location still isn't known for sure. To figure out where a rock came from, scientists first have to study their composition. This is like checking the rock's DNA. Then they cross-reference the structure of the rock with minerals in the soil to see if it's a match. Most of the Sarsens we see around southern England are actually made of a type of sandstone known as silcrete. Think of silcrete as sand that's been hardened by underground water processes over millions of years. This process mostly happened during a period called the Paleogene, about 65 to 23 million years ago. These Sarsen rocks didn't form in one big slab, but in patches, like nature leaving little rock gardens all over the place. Scientists reason the Sarsens spread out randomly, forming in isolated pockets. Over time, many were buried under layers of clay and chalk, which helped preserve them. When ancient builders were on the lookout for materials, these Sarsens must have looked perfect for something impressive like Stonehenge. Actually, Sarsens have been used in everything, from Roman villas to medieval churches, and even in things like road curbs and old field walls. One could say these rocks were the it material for ancient builders, and continue to be popular even into more modern times. This fact made scientists start wondering that maybe not all Sarsen stones that were used to build Stonehenge came from the same place. They've identified Sarsen sites all over the UK, in places such as Oxfordshire and Kent. After hundreds of years of studying the Sarsens, geologists finally had the right type of technology to determine the origin of the stones. Now, I wish I could tell you that it was some undisclosed location very far away from the site. But, as it turned out, the Sarsens were originally from Westwoods, the forest near Stonehenge. A new factor came into play when excavations uncovered empty stone holes, showing that at least 6 bluestone pillars were removed from a Preseli Hills site called Wan Main in prehistory. They had a stone circle over there, and it's believed that some of Stonehenge's rocks were recycled rocks from this more ancient circle. If this is true, it might be that Stonehenge is part of a much larger landscape of ancient sites. If this is the case, then Stonehenge is just the cherry on top of a much larger scale project. Think of it as the sacred centerpiece of an entire landscape of monuments, mounds, stone circles, and things. This is why scientists want to find out where the rocks came from so badly. It could lead to why and how Stonehenge was built. Now, Stonehenge didn't just pop up overnight. It was built in several stages over hundreds of years. It's likely that it wasn't a single unified vision, but more like a big community project that evolved over time. With each generation, the builders brought in their own ideas, creating a stone structure that would last for ages. The first stage was around 3100 BCE. That's when people dug out a circular ditch and likely set up some bluestones as sort of a starter ring. Later, they added the Sarsens and even topped some of them with horizontal stones to form those famous arches you see today, also known as the trilithons. These ancient builders had some challenges on their hands. How would they move the rocks? There's an old theory known as the ice road that suggests that the rocks were moved by natural icy pathways that formed during the winter. This way, they could slide the rocks down all the way to Stonehenge. But hey, if we're talking about a distance of over 100 miles, that's not too realistic. Anyways, this theory was debunked because it was warmer back then than it is today. There's also the river theory, which suggests that the rocks were floated along the river from the quarry to the site. But if we're talking about Sarsen rocks, they're too heavy to float. So there goes that theory. What we're saying is, no one knows how the rocks were moved. Another interesting science tidbit came from all the research done in Stonehenge. A recent laser survey of the stones revealed the different stone working methods used, and has shown that some of the parts of the monument were more carefully finished than others. In particular, the northeast side and the inner faces of the central trilithons were finely dressed. FYI, a trilithon is one of Stonehenge's most famous shapes. It's when two huge monoliths receive a third one on top of them, connecting the two together. This fancy word is simply Greek for having three stones. But anyways, the bigger question, and the reason Stonehenge is so famous, is why it was built in the first place. Theories are all over the place, and some sound like they're straight out of a sci-fi show. So here's a rundown of the most popular ideas. There's, of course, the solar calendar theory. This one supposes that the stones are aligned with the movements of the sun, especially during the summer and winter solstices. During the summer solstice, the sun rises to the left of the heel stone, that's the lone stone outside the main circle, lighting up the entire monument. Some say it's the ancient version of a calendar, marking the year's longest and shortest days. Some archaeologists think Stonehenge might have been an ancient healing center. Pieces of bluestone have been found chipped away, possibly by people who believed they had healing powers. The theory goes that people traveled from all over to come to Stonehenge in hopes of a cure for whatever was ailing them. There's also some speculation that Stonehenge was the place to be. Think of it as an ancient gathering spot. Some evidence suggests that communities from distant areas traveled to Stonehenge for gatherings, feasts, and ceremonies. Studies of bones found near the site show they came from all over Britain, making it a sort of prehistoric meetup location. Stonehenge took approximately 20 million man-hours to build. For comparison, an average human doesn't live much over 700,000 hours. This is Jack, one of the first builders of Stonehenge. Let's say Jack lived to be 80 years old, which is extremely improbable, but it makes it easier for me to crunch the numbers, thanks. If Jack had spent his entire life, from age 0 to age 80, working on the Stonehenge project, it would have required approximately 28.5 generations of people doing the same thing to complete it. That's next to impossible. To make it more plausible, let's multiply that by 2. After all, Jack wouldn't want to dedicate his entire life to moving stones, and he didn't live to be that old. Thus, we arrive at around 57 generations needed to build Stonehenge. That's not enough room on the screen for me to introduce John, Jack's great-great-great-great, you get the drift, grandson. So it all began around 5,000 years ago with just a simple circular earthen bank and ditch. Fast forward to around 26,000 BCE, and the builders replaced that initial structure with a complex arrangement of wooden posts and brought in around 80 dolerite bloom stones from Wales, which were rearranged at least 3 times. Then, a few hundred years later, they added those massive sarsen stones, each weighing around 25 tons. These enormous sandstone blocks were transported about 19 miles to create a continuous outer circle, with 5 trilithons, 2 upright stones topped with a lintel, forming a horseshoe shape inside. It was a millennium-long building process that demanded years of hard work. So, people must have lived nearby, right? But how would they have found shelter back then? Today, we have houses for builders on site, small accommodations that serve as temporary housing. But structures like this definitely didn't exist when Stonehenge was constructed, did they? Well, actually, they existed, and some recent archaeological digs near Stonehenge prove it. Archaeologists found this Stone Age eco-home, which is a huge deal since it's one of the earliest settlements in the area. This newly uncovered Mesolithic home dates back to around the year 4300 BCE. Let's take a closer look at this house, shall we? Now, for the walls, people back then used a large fallen tree, its trunk to be more precise. These wooden walls were reinforced with flint, and they even lined the pit left by the uprooted tree with cobblestones. To create the roof, they opted for animal hides, which sounds like a wise choice. They must have provided protection against the unpredictable weather of the British Isles. Now, you might be wondering, the weather in Britain is indeed unpredictable, and it has been that way since time immemorial. So, how did the builders manage throughout most of the year, particularly during the winter months? Well, the answer is simple. There was a hearth on site, which isn't surprising, but the system they employed was quite ingenious. A hearth inside the house would have posed too great a risk, yet bringing hot stones into the dwelling was perfectly safe. While they were hot, they couldn't ignite the building. So they used these stones from the hearth as a heat storage system to keep warm at night. And as a final touch, they even incorporated various stones for decoration. They didn't exactly get a Pinterest house, but it added a touch of elegance for sure. And if you think this discovery is merely about the houses, think again. It significantly changes our understanding of how people lived during that time. This discovery places them in an important prehistoric setting right at the start of the Neolithic area, sparking some interesting questions about whether these early folks could be related to the people who built Stonehenge. But there's a big worry. Experts are concerned that this significant find, along with other buried archaeological sites, could be at risk if the authorities go ahead with plans to build a tunnel to reroute the A303 away from the World Heritage Site. Sure thing, the house the scientists found wasn't in perfect shape, and it lacked some crucial elements people use for living. Some of them decayed over time, while others were simply absent. So the scientists took 20 tons of chalk, 5,000 hazel rods, and 3 tons of straw, and used all this to recreate the 4,500-year-old design houses. These new buildings are located close to Stonehenge, which is incredible since in this area, planning permission for even a new cowshed is problematic. So, what are these houses like? Well, first off, there are 4 of them, and they're oval-shaped. They're built on the foundation of real houses that stood there about 4,500 years ago, just around the time the Stonehenge Eco House was going up. The houses aren't very big, they're single-room structures. When it comes to dimensions, it was straightforward to estimate since we could gauge the size of the roof and the height of the walls based on the foundations. Each side measures about 16 feet. However, the roof structure remains a bit of a mystery. There were a few differing thatching techniques back then, so pinpointing the exact method used for these dwellings is kind of a guessing game. For now, we think it involves knotted or tied straw carefully secured onto a hazel-woven frame. When fires are lit, the smoke from the hearth wafts up through the thatched roof. Now, remember those 20 tons of chalk? That was needed for the floors and walls. The white chalk walls and floors reflect sunlight and capture heat from the fire. But here's the kicker. The builders encountered a challenge because the ground was so waterlogged that some of the chalk floors took weeks to dry out. By the time they should have been bone dry, they were still as sticky as chewing gum. Now, it's safe to say people 4,500 years ago faced similar struggles, and we can really appreciate what they went through while building their homes. The final layer of daub was applied using rags, giving a smooth, almost shiny finish that looks surprisingly classy. The interiors are furnished with wooden and wicker beds and shelves, along with clay pots and jars, all centered around a cozy hearth. The spaces feel surprisingly roomy and are filled with light that streams in through the thatched roof, bouncing off those white walls. Plus, the woven furniture adds a nice touch of authenticity to the vibe. The fires have been lit, and the first meal, bread crafted from flour ground on a stone mill next to the hearth, has been prepared. Those who tried the bread were pleasantly surprised by its flavor, finding it quite tasty. Now, here comes the bummer. Those who recreated the houses did cheat a little. While the materials used were authentic, the tools weren't. They used cement mixers to mix the daub, wheelbarrows to transport the timber, and logs by the hearth were split with steel axes instead of stone ones. Still, the builders aren't professionals, they're volunteers. So I think a bit of cheating is totally cool in this case. There are other volunteers on site who are more than happy to chat about the daily activities of the Stonehenge builders, from grinding grain with a quern to making rope from rushes. But these houses and the Eco House aren't the only remarkable things in the Stonehenge area. Some years ago, archaeologists uncovered a burial site close to Stonehenge that predates the monument itself. This Neolithic long barrow, dating back approximately 56 to 5,700 years, likely contains the remains of some of Britain's earliest inhabitants. The burial site was identified through aerial images that revealed its distinct shape beneath the crops. Salisbury Plain is rich with ancient sites, including Stonehenge, various mounds, and monuments. The area has remained undisturbed over the centuries, which is likely why so many ancient structures are still intact. This discovery also shows a significant shift in human lifestyle during that era, marking a transition from a nomadic existence to settled farming and animal husbandry, much like the Eco House itself. The long barrow in question measures about 85 feet long and 65 feet wide, though much of its above-ground structure has been lost to farming over the years. If this site is like others in the vicinity, it contains the remains of 30 to 50 individuals, along with cow skulls, which were significant to those early communities.
Stonehenge wasn't a witchy monument to travel through time. It was actually constructed as a hope to build a different future. Recent research just found out that the monument was probably raised as an attempt to reunite the Britons during a period of big division. The thread of this story lies on the altar stone, the monument's most iconic rock. For years, scientists believed that the stones used in Stonehenge, including the altar stone, came from the nearby Preseli Hills in Wales. In this scenario, Stonehenge would have been built by a local community, that is, Neolithic people who would have found easy-to-access materials to build a ceremonial mound, a sundial calendar, and a final resting place, all in one. Things changed when another discovery was made. In 2018, leading-edge research pointed that the altar stone actually came from the River Tay region in northeastern Scotland, which is located over 400 miles away from Stonehenge. Scientists found similar rocks as such in Scottish monuments. You see, the altar stone is a recumbent stone, laying on its side. Many of the rocks were found in ceremonial stone circles in Scotland, and they are unique to this region. When this discovery broke through, it got archaeologists thinking. Maybe Stonehenge wasn't just a local project, but a wider collaboration between different tribes and communities across Britain. To understand this, we need to rewind to around 3000 BCE. That's when Britain still wasn't a unified country per se. Rather, it was a patchwork of tribes such as those coming from southern or eastern Europe, each with their own customs and beliefs. As an island, Britain's population changed many times. Britain was mainly composed of farmers who descended from people from the Middle East and arrived on the land around 6,000 years ago. This group thrived in the area until 2500 BCE, when another group coming from the regions of the Netherlands and Germany started to appear. These ones, also known as the Beaker people, were responsible for the large population turnover that Britain experienced during the Neolithic period and the years that followed. The Beakers were called so because of a specific type of pottery they used to make and bury their loved ones with after their passing. It's possible that the original dwellers of the land didn't like it that their land was being repopulated. And what researchers suggest is that Stonehenge was this attempt to reunite the original Neolithic farmer population and regain some type of identity control over their land. They would have invested a lot of time and energy in bringing the altar stone all the way down from Scotland, without the help of wheel technology, for example. You see, the wheel had already been invented in Lower Mesopotamia, but since there was no Wi-Fi at the time, the Brits weren't aware of this technology until much later on. This whole territorial crisis could have driven locals to use their resources to move the altar stone to Salisbury Plain in England, in order to reunify the land. You see, Stonehenge wasn't built in one go. Its history dates to around 3000 BCE. That's when the monument was just a circular ditch and bank known as a henge. Inside, they placed wooden posts and possibly totem-like carvings. This version of Stonehenge wasn't about rocks yet. It was more of a ritualistic place and possibly a final resting place. They found several cremation pits from this period, making it the oldest resting place in all of Britain. It was only around 2600 BCE that the blue stones came around. The naming might be a bit misleading since they're not literally blue rocks. They have a bluish tinge to them when they're freshly broken, hence the name. These smaller rocks probably came from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, which is about 150 miles away from Stonehenge. Some researchers say that the ancient ones believed that blue stones had healing qualities. So we can maybe guess why they went through all of the trouble to move them from Wales to Salisbury Plains, huh? A little bit later than that, circa 2500, that's when we start having the Stonehenge we know and love today. That's when the Sarsen stones started to arrive. The Sarsens are Stonehenge's huge stones. I mean, each Sarsen can weigh around 25 tons. That's as much as 3 African elephants stacked together. The Sarsens make that iconic outer ring circle. Supposedly, that's also when the altar stone was moved from Scotland directly to the heart of Stonehenge. The altar stone is the largest of the blue stones used to build Stonehenge. Today, the altar stone lies recumbent at the foot of the largest trilithon of the monument. In case you don't know, the trilithons are the horizontal stones used to form those famous arches we see today. And here's where the story takes a twist. For nearly a century, scientists believe that the altar stone came from the same area as the blue stones, the Preseli Hills in Wales. It made sense back then. If you're already hauling stones from Wales, why not grab a special one to be the so-called altar? Except that theory started crumbling in 2018, when a team of researchers decided to dig deeper. They used advanced geochemical analysis to pinpoint where the altar stone's sandstone actually came from, and it turns out it wasn't Wales. Instead, the results pointed north, specifically to the Orcadian Basin in northeastern Scotland, 400 miles from Stonehenge. This revelation changed the whole script of Stonehenge's story. How would they move the rocks, you may ask? Well, there's an old theory known as the ice road that suggests that the rocks were moved by natural icy pathways that formed during the winter. This way, they could slide the rocks down all the way to Stonehenge. But hey, if we're talking about a distance of over 100 miles, that's not too realistic. Anyways, this theory was debunked because it was warmer back then than it is today. There's also the river theory that suggests that the rocks were floating along the river from the quarry to the site. But if we're talking about Sarsen rocks, they're too heavy to float. So there goes this theory. What we're saying is, no one knows how the rocks were moved. Another interesting info came from all the research done in Stonehenge. A recent laser survey of the stones revealed the different stone working methods used and has shown that some parts of the monument were more carefully finished than others. In particular, the northeast side and the inner faces of the central trilithons were finely dressed. FYI, a trilithon is one of Stonehenge's most famous shapes. It's when two huge monoliths receive a third one on top of them, connecting the two together. This fancy word is just Greek for having three stones. But anyway, the bigger question, and maybe why Stonehenge is so famous, is why it was built in the first place. You see, Stonehenge's entire layout seems to have been carefully planned to align with the movements of the sun. The monument's architecture is particularly attuned to the solstices, the shortest and longest days of the year. During the summer solstice, the sun rises perfectly in line with the heel stone, casting light straight into the heart of the stone circle. A spectacular, almost magical sight that surely wowed its ancient audience. But it's the midwinter solstice that seems to hold a special connection to the altar stone. As the sun sets on that day, its light aligns with the altar stone at the center of Stonehenge. To the builders of Stonehenge, this alignment may have symbolized more than just celestial precision. It likely carried profound ancestral and spiritual significance. The altar stone, illuminated by the setting sun, could have been seen as a bridge between worlds, connecting the living with their ancestors, the earth with the cosmos, and the present with the eternal. In a world without calendars, clocks, or weather apps, the solstices were everything. They marked the rhythm of life, guiding agricultural cycles and spiritual rituals alike. So Stonehenge wasn't just about the stones or the people who built it, but perhaps a way to honor their ancestral roots in an ever-changing world.
The majority of us have believed for a really long time that Stonehenge, one of the most iconic monuments in the world, was an ancient calendar because of its alignment with the summer and winter solstices. But no one could figure out how it really worked. Now, a team of researchers have come out with another study. It turns out that Stonehenge could have functioned like the solar calendar. It's a similar principle to the solar calendar ancient Egyptians used to have, the one based on a year composed of 365.25 days. Each of the stones from this big mysterious sarsen circle represented one day within a month. Sarsens are what we call these large boulders. It's actually a perpetual calendar, where people could track every winter solstice sunset. That way, those who lived near Stonehenge, which is today Wiltshire, UK, could keep track of the days and months of the year. We all now understand this mysterious calendar system because of this interesting discovery in 2020. The team has identified the source of 50 of the 52 sarsens that make up the iconic stone circle we all know about. They analyzed the chemical composition of these sarsens and traced their origins to the West Woods in Wiltshire, which is about 15 miles away from the monument. Not only did these 50 sarsens come from the same source, but they were also placed in their current position at approximately the same time. They make the outer circle of Stonehenge, together with a horseshoe-shaped inner ring. Near the center of the monument, there are smaller rocks, known as bluestones. The team traced the origins of the bluestones all the way to Wales. They also discovered that the sarsens share a common chemistry, over 99% silica with trace elements. Two sarsens were different from each other and also different from the main cluster. These sarsens were arranged in 3 different formations at Stonehenge. 30 of them formed this huge stone circle that dominates the monument. 4 station stones ended up in a rectangular formation outside the circle, while the rest, located inside the stone circle, were constructed into 5 trilithons. A trilithon is when you have 2 vertical stones with a horizontal lintel at the top. 30, 5, and 4 are pretty interesting numbers in the context of this calendar system. The 30 uprights that are spread around the main Sarsen ring could represent days of the month. If you multiply that by 12, you get 360. Add on 5 more, those from the central trilithons, and the result is 365. And to really adjust the calendar to match a solar year, you need to add 1 extra leap day for every 4 years, right? The team believes the ancient people used the 4 station stones to keep track of this part. So, in this system, they paired the summer and winter solstice every year with the same pair of stones. Ancient people started building Stonehenge about 5,000 years ago, and it took more than 1,000 years to finish the work. But the Stonehenge you see today is not the complete, original version from the beginning. People have broken and taken away many of its old bluestones and sarsens. The entire structure also changed over time since there were generations and generations, 180 of them to be precise, that passed since the beginning of Stonehenge, who would participate in the building and rebuilding of it. People created Stonehenge in 4 stages. They first built a circular enclosure that stretched over 330 feet, 100 meters, in diameter and went around 56 pits. A high bank flanks the ditch of the enclosure, while there's a low bank on the outside. Some theories even say that this part was some form of a communal cemetery. Later, in the second stage, builders added a horseshoe of Sarsen trilithons. In the third stage, they constructed a ceremonial avenue that was nearly 2 miles long. It possibly traced the path of the bluestones. People moved from the Aubrey holes to the Q&R holes, a double arc that these bluestones have been arranged into. At this stage, builders also reorganized the entrance stones and recut the main enclosure ditch. During the fourth stage, the stones were broken and builders etched carvings into the sarsens. Later, the bluestones ended up being modified again. Builders didn't leave any written records about how they managed to drag these heavy stones to the site and get them to stand so perfectly upright. But there are theories that say their techniques were more closely associated with woodwork than masonry. They made mortise holes and protruding tenons because they wanted to slot these stones together, and they used tongue and groove joints to do that. When they dug the hole for the stones, they placed timber poles at the back of the holes that were used as brace support. Then they moved the stone into a position and hauled it upward with ropes. They packed rubble into the hole to make sure the stone stayed in place. A pre-industrial farming society put this fascinating monument together using only tools made of stone and bone. Not even the wheel had been invented yet. This unusual formation is also known as ringing rocks. The stones you can see at Stonehenge have some pretty odd acoustic properties. When you strike them, they produce a loud clanging sound. That could be one of the reasons why people bothered to transport them over such a long distance in the first place. In some ancient cultures, people believed that these rocks contained healing powers. It's a really popular location that attracts over 1 million visitors a year. When it first opened to the public, visitors were allowed to walk among the stones. They could even climb on them, as there weren't any restrictions. Until the 19th century, visitors would regularly chip off pieces of the rock to take them home as souvenirs. They would also engrave their initials into the stones. They camped within the circle and dug fire pits, not realizing that the digging pits could seriously undermine the stability of the entire monument. Over time, visitors have encountered more and more restrictions until the monument was finally roped off in 1997 because of the serious erosion of the stones. That means if you want to visit, you can only view it from a distance unless you want to pay extra for the stone circle experience, which can be arranged outside of normal visiting hours. Stonehenge originally had 2 entrances that led into the enclosure. There was a wide one to the northeast and one that was a bit smaller and located on the southern side. If you look at it today, you can see there are many more gaps. This is mostly because of tracks made later that once crossed the monument. The ground within Stonehenge has been severely disturbed, and it wasn't just about random visitors digging fire pits. There was a group of people who dug a large deep hole within the stone circle in the 17th century because they were looking for treasure. Then there was Charles Darwin, who also did some digging because he was studying earthworms in the area. He wanted to know how these worms could impact objects in the soil over time. He observed how a fallen stone there had sunk deeper into the ground and realized it was happening because of the activities of these tiny creatures who churned through the soil all the time. In 1963, there was a theory that Stonehenge had been built as some sort of computer that predicts solar and lunar eclipses. Later, some proposed it was actually constructed as a monument to ancestors that had passed away. This theory says the permanence of its stones represented the eternal afterlife. The average sarsen you can find there weighs 25 tons, while the biggest one weighs around 30 tons. If you want to get an idea of how massive these stones really are, you can go behind the visitor center in the outdoor gallery to check out a replica sarsen stone. It's a true copy of a freestanding upright from one of the trilithons that are located in the inner horseshoe of the monument. There are 5 Neolithic houses at Stonehenge based on real archaeological evidence of houses found in that area. Each of them had stake-built walls and a chalk floor. Some even had furniture. There was also a lot of trash discovered, which means people in this area used to like celebrations and feasting. Research has shown that people lived in these houses for 50 to 100 years, around 4,500 years BCE, which was the time when the builders brought the sarsen stones to Stonehenge. During the time they were building Stonehenge, generations of people went through major changes themselves, from the Stone Age to the early Bronze Age. They were no longer as static and isolated. They started to travel and trade more, which means they communicated way more than their ancestors, even internationally. This is how they could have spread the word about Stonehenge. And it's also when the whole mystery and fascination with the monument began. Stonehenge is famous, but it isn't the oldest UK monument of its kind in England. That title belongs to Flagstones, a site that predates Stonehenge by about 200 years. In fact, it's possible that whoever built Stonehenge might have been copycats, or perhaps, as some prefer, inspired by flagstones. Let's start unraveling the mystery of flagstones by looking at its exact age. To crack this ancient puzzle, scientists turned to a powerful technique: radiocarbon dating prehistoric monuments. This method works on organic materials like wood, bone, or charcoal that are up to about 60,000 years old. Each of these materials contains something called carbon-14. When an organism passes away, its carbon-14 starts to break down at a predictable rate. By measuring how much is left, scientists can estimate the age of these ancient objects. The method is really impressive, so it doesn't come as a surprise that the inventor of this method was awarded the Nobel Prize. Radiocarbon dating has revealed that people built flagstones around 3,200 BCE, making it older than even the earliest parts of Stonehenge. But the mystery of flagstones is just beginning to unfold. Flagstones is located in Dorset, in southwest England, about 37 miles away from Stonehenge. It was discovered in the 1980s when workers were building a new road. Archaeologists dug up a huge circular ditch about 330 feet wide, made with overlapping pits. Inside the pits, they found the remains of at least 7 people, a cremated adult, 3 young individuals, and 3 other adults whose bodies were partly cremated. This shows that people could have used the site as an ancient cremation burial site. Flagstones is basically a big, ancient circle that popped up right where early farming communities were spending their time. If you went there today, you wouldn't see any obvious walls or banks, but if you look inside the pits that make up the circle, you'll find chalk rubble from both sides. That's a clue that when people dug these pits, they used the dirt and chalk they took out to build up banks both inside and outside the circle. This special spot sits right in the middle of a whole bunch of other really old monuments and sites, which were built over thousands of years during the Neolithic and Bronze Ages. Experts have figured out the ages of some of these nearby places really well. For example, the ditch at Maiden Castle dates back to around 3,600 BCE, and the Big Henge at Mount Pleasant was built around 2,600 BCE. Today, half of Flagstones is under that road, and the other half is under an old historic house looked after by the National Trust.
You can find objects from the site at the Dorset Museum. Because flagstones and early Stonehenge look so similar, with round enclosures, pits, and cremated burials, scientists used to think they appeared at the same time. But thanks to radiocarbon dating, we now know flagstones, this ancient cremation burial site, is the earliest big circular monument ever found in Britain. To figure out how old the site really is, researchers tested things like human bones, red deer antlers, and charcoal found there. One of the most puzzling discoveries was a young man who was buried under a huge sarsen stone in the middle of the circle. Someone left him there about 1,000 years after people used the site for the first time. This find just added to the mystery of flagstones. You're probably wondering about the flagstones versus Stonehenge comparison. Well, the latter is a mystery on its own, a big old circle of giant stones in the south of England. Those who made it didn't write anything down, so we don't know exactly what they were thinking. One old tale says that King Arthur's wizard, Merlin, used magic to move the stones from Ireland, where giants had put them together. Another story says that people from Denmark built it. Today, some people think extraterrestrial visitors made it. A man named John Aubrey started studying Stonehenge in the 1660s. He thought the Celts had built it for their priests, called Druids, but that turned out to be wrong. Radiocarbon dating of this prehistoric monument shows that its constructors built it in phases over several centuries. The construction started around 3100 BCE and continued till around 1600 BCE. First, about 5,000 years ago, it was just a round ditch in the ground. Then people added wooden posts. Around 2600 BCE, they brought big blue stones from Wales. Later, they added sarsens, even bigger stones, each weighing as much as 5 elephants. They moved those stones from 19 miles away and placed them in a big circle with 5 tall stone arches shaped like a horseshoe. Experts think building Stonehenge took more than 20 million hours of hard work. And that's a lot of teamwork, strength, and planning for people who didn't even have machines. These days, there are a few different ideas about what Stonehenge was really used for. Some experts think it was a sacred place where people gathered for religious ceremonies. Others believe it was an early kind of science center used to study the sky and track time. Both groups notice that the stones at Stonehenge are lined up with the sun and moon, so people may have used the site to mark the changing seasons, especially during the summer and winter solstices. Some think it worked like a giant calendar, helping people figure out dates or predict things like solar eclipses. Stonehenge was an ancient cremation burial site too, at least for some time. Anyway, if we continue with the flagstones versus Stonehenge comparison, we can't but dwell more on the age of these monuments. Flagstones is older than Stonehenge. In fact, it's one of the oldest UK monuments. It's really special because it's the most ancient big round enclosure ever found in Britain. According to the newest studies, its age is about 5,200 years old. After it was built, more and more round monuments started popping up in other places too. Before its construction, most ancient monuments were long and straight, like rectangular barrows or burial mounds, or long ditches called cursus monuments. Some had even more random shapes, but the flagstones monument shows a big change. People were starting to build in circles instead. Some experts think this idea of circular monuments might have come from Ireland, where people were already burying cremated bodies in round tombs. On the other hand, even though flagstones has turned out to be older than Stonehenge, the new findings suggest that Stonehenge might need to be redated. Some of the objects found at Stonehenge, like animal bones, are actually older than the main structure itself. For example, near the entrances to Stonehenge, archaeologists found deer bones and cattle skulls that date to around 3,200 BCE. Experts used to think that people kept those bones for a long time before burying them.
but it's possible there was an early version of Stonehenge made from overlapping pits that existed before the big circular ditch was built around 2900 BCE. Now, could flagstones and Stonehenge have been part of a bigger shared tradition? Could there have been other ancient cremation burial sites in the UK? After all, these constructions aren't the only round prehistoric monuments in Britain. In Wales, there's a similar site, called Llandegaihenge, which also looks like a circular burial place. Such a way of burying the deceased might have been a common custom across the UK because you can see similar structures in Eastern Ireland. In the Boyne Valley, for example, there are ancient places like the Mound of the Hostages that people used in the same way. Now, researchers want to do more digging in Ireland to see if some of those monuments were built before 3200 BCE. If they're even older than flagstones, they might help explain where the idea of building round burial sites started and why people across Britain and Ireland were building them. The more we learn, the better we'll understand what these sites were really for and how the people back then might have shared beliefs and traditions across the sea. Hopefully, one day, we'll figure out the mystery of flagstones, one of the oldest monuments in the UK.
Hey, if you think Stonehenge is one of the oldest stone monuments ever, well, let me introduce you to Göbekli Tepe. Buckle up, we gotta travel to Turkey to meet this really old guy. Yeah, he's too old to travel. Jokes aside, Göbekli Tepe, an archaeological site located in southeastern Turkey that dates back to the Neolithic period around 10,000 BCE. It's considered to be one of the oldest and most significant archaeological discoveries in recent times. The site consists of a series of circular and rectangular structures made of stone pillars. Yeah, it does look like its younger brother Stonehenge. Some of those pillars are decorated with intricate carvings of animals and other symbols. Now, you maybe wonder, hey, why on earth did they make such a fascinating building? What was its purpose? Sorry, I got no answer for that. The purpose of the site is still unknown, but it is believed to have been a ceremonial center for the ancient people who lived in the area. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe has challenged long-held beliefs about the development of human civilization, as it suggests that complex societies may have emerged much earlier than previously thought. Okay, pack your stuff, our travel's just started. Next destination, Masada. It's an ancient fortress located in Israel on a plateau overlooking the Dead Sea. Hey, look at that view, spectacular, huh? It was built by King Herod the Great in the 1st century BCE, and it was very smartly built. Within the fortress, there were various facilities such as storehouses, barracks, a palace, and a set of cisterns capable of holding approximately 40,000 cubic meters of rainwater. People living there believed that the collected runoff from a single day's rainfall could provide sustenance for over 1,000 individuals for a period of 2 to 3 years. Access to the fortress was limited to 3 steep and winding paths leading up to fortified gates. Still, at one point, the fortress was occupied by people who had fled Jerusalem after the city was captured by the Romans. They held out against the invaders for several months, but eventually they were defeated. But these guys didn't surrender. The story of Masada has become a symbol of resistance and bravery. Today, Masada is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The next flight is going to be short. We're popping over to Egypt to see the Karnak Temple Complex. It's a vast ancient Egyptian temple complex located in the city of Luxor, Egypt. It was built over a period of 2,000 years and covers an area of more than 200 acres. The complex is dedicated to the worship of the deity Amun-Ra. Wait a minute, that should be Amun-Ra, and it was one of the most important religious centers in ancient Egypt. The Karnak Temple consists of several temples, chapels, and other buildings, including the Great Temple of Amun, the Temple of Khonsu, and the Temple of Ptah. Ptah! The Great Temple of Amun is the largest and most impressive temple in the complex, with massive columns, statues, and other decorations. One of the most famous features of the Karnak Temple complex is the Avenue of Sphinxes, which is a long avenue lined with Sphinx statues that leads from the entrance of the complex to the Great Temple of Amun. Another notable feature is the Hypostyle Hall, which is a massive hall with 134 columns that are over 70 feet high. The Karnak Temple complex is a popular tourist attraction and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's considered one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt and provides a fascinating glimpse into the religion and culture of ancient Egypt. Hey, we can't hop on the next flight and leave Egypt until we see the Pyramid of Djoser. It has another name, by the way. It's also known as the Step Pyramid. This ancient Egyptian site is located in Saqqara. It was built during the 27th century BCE for the pharaoh Djoser by his architect Imhotep, who is considered one of the most important figures in Egyptian history. People believe this pyramid is the first monumental structure built entirely of stone and is an important example of early Egyptian architecture. The pyramid originally stood at 203 feet tall and was surrounded by a complex of buildings and courtyards. It was constructed in 6 layers, each smaller than the one below it, giving it the distinctive step-like appearance. The pyramid was used as a burial place for Pharaoh Djoser and was surrounded by a vast necropolis that contained the tombs of many other important officials. The Grateful Dead? The Pyramid of Djoser has several renovations and additions over the centuries, including the addition of a limestone casing that covered the original step structure. However, much of the pyramid was destroyed over time, and today only the central core remains. Despite this, it remains an important archaeological site and a popular tourist attraction in Egypt. Alrighty, we're ready to move on. There's one more pretty recent discovery we gotta see today. The Tower of Jericho was only discovered during excavations in the 1950s and 60s. It's an ancient stone tower located in the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Just like Göbekli Tepe, this one is believed to be one of the oldest stone structures in the world, dating back to approximately 8000 BCE. The tower stands at over 28 feet tall. It's made up of 2 main sections, an inner tower and an outer tower, which are connected by a series of stairs. The purpose of the Tower of Jericho is not entirely clear, but it is believed to have served as a defensive structure or a watchtower. It may have also had religious significance, as it was located near a sacred spring. The Tower of Jericho is a significant archaeological site and has provided valuable insights into the early history of human civilization. It's open to visitors and is a popular destination for tourists interested in ancient history. Now, this ancient site even got attention from Netflix, and they made a movie where the action takes place in Mohenjo-Daro. This site was a major center of the Indus Valley civilization in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo-Daro was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, with a population estimated to have been around 40,000 in its peak. Trust me, that must have been a crazy megalopolis back then. The city was notable for its advanced urban planning, with sophisticated drainage and sanitation systems, and its impressive architecture, including the Great Bath and the Granary. Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned around 1900 BCE, and its ruins were only rediscovered in the 1920s. Today, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and an important archaeological site for the study of ancient South Asian civilization. We're heading to a teeny-tiny country that has quite an impressive history. Welcome to Malta. The Tsigansia Temples are a Neolithic site located on the Mediterranean island of Gozo. They're probably one of the oldest freestanding structures in the world, dating back to around 3600 to 3200 BCE. The temples consist of 2 megalithic structures, each with multiple rooms and altars. The name Tsigantia means giant tower in Maltese, as people believe that only giants could have built such massive structures. The temples are believed to have been used for religious purposes and are considered to be an important example of prehistoric architecture. They were added to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1980. Well, you must be pretty tired, but there's one more place we gotta visit today. Our plane is already landing in Armenia, and we're here to see the Temple of Garni. Look, this one is well preserved. This temple dates back to the 1st century CE. It was built by King Herodotus I as a dedication to the sun deity Mir. Sadly, the temple was destroyed in the 17th century during an earthquake, which is quite a common thing for this area, but it was later reconstructed in the 20th century. Today, it's a popular tourist attraction and is also listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Hey, you've heard of Stonehenge? Of course you have. Big rocks mysteriously mounted in circles on a plain in England by, somebody. But what if England's Stonehenge is only a replica of another monument, and its builders just crossed the Atlantic and copied what someone had already done elsewhere? Well, it turns out researchers found another Stonehenge underneath the waters of Lake Michigan. This lake is a hotspot for woo-woo unexplained things. A bunch of disappearances, plane crashes, and now this, an ancient underwater monument that looks strangely enough like Stonehenge. We couldn't help ourselves and needed to dive deep into this story. A ring of massive stones, arranged in a way that felt all too familiar. They saw two circles, an outer one and an inner one, sitting 40 feet below the surface. But this wasn't just a random pile of rocks. These stones had been placed there purposefully by human hands. And by doing some further research, they discovered that they were staring at a structure that's over 9,000 years old. Think about it. This Stonehenge beneath Lake Michigan predates the pyramids. It predates Stonehenge itself by about 4,000 years. All of this information was enough to startle scientists at Northwestern Michigan University. But that was before they found this out. One of the stones had a carving, a faint but clear petroglyph of a mastodon. Mastodons kind of look like the ancestors to our modern-day elephants, but they have been extinct on planet Earth since 10,000 years ago. So, whoever built this underwater Stonehenge needed to be alive at the same time these creatures roamed our planet. This discovery raised many questions among scientists. I mean, why on earth would they go through all this trouble to lay rocks at the bottom of a lake? Well, first things first. Scientists believe that Lake Michigan had much less water back then than it does now. Second, it could have something to do with ancestral practices of First Nation people. There's one theory from a professor of the University of Michigan. He suggested that the stones formed a kind of prehistoric hunting trap. He believes that early hunters used the circular formation as a drive lane to herd large animals like the mastodons from the rock carvings we were just talking about. Once they got these huge animals into a tighter circle, they could be more easily hunted. But not everyone's convinced by this theory. Some believe the circle probably had a deeper spiritual purpose. According to local Native American tribes, like the Anishinaabe, stones are more than just rocks. They're living beings. They hold spiritual energy and represent a connection to the earth and all living creatures. An elder from the Anishinaabe community even suggested that these stones are sacred, placed there by their ancestors to honor the land and its creatures. Scientists are trying to study the stone formation in depth, like about 40 feet. But that's the problem, actually. The fact that it's underwater makes it super difficult, since they don't have the best technology. Traditional archaeological tools don't work as well when everything is submerged, but promising new technologies like stereophotogrammetry, which literally means making 3D models of a site, are helping scientists study the stone circle more closely. Still, research is slow and expensive, so it's hard to know when this mystery will come to a close. As we said, Lake Michigan is a hot spot for unexplained phenomena. Its lakebed is filled with shipwrecks, such as the Thomas Hume, a sturdy American schooner. It also collects debris from airplanes that have suddenly gone missing while flying the area. such as Northwest Airlines Flight 2501 that disappeared in the 1950s. Some people even call the area the Lake Michigan Triangle, suggesting paranormal activities like what happens in the Bermuda Triangle might be going on. The lake spans over 22,000 square miles, which means it's almost two-thirds the size of the country of Ireland. In 2024, scientists were able to access another one of Lake Michigan's mysteries, the wreck of the Margaret A. Muir schooner. This 130-foot-long sailing ship sank over 130 years ago. The discovery was announced just recently by the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeological Association, the WUAA, whose team found the shipwreck sitting 50 feet below the surface just off the shores of Algoma, Wisconsin. Built in 1872, the Margaret A. Muir was a three-masted schooner built to carry heavy cargo across the Great Lakes. Her final voyage started out as a routine trip. Loaded with bulk salt, the ship left Bay City, Michigan, heading for South Chicago, Illinois. But on September 30th, 1893, things took a bad turn. Just as the Muir approached the town of Annapolis, now known as Algoma, a sudden storm hit. The ship began taking on water fast. The captain of the boat ordered his crew to abandon ship, and thankfully, they all made it to shore safely. For more than a century, the wreck sat undisturbed on the lake bed, its location a mystery. But thanks to a combination of historical research and high-resolution sonar, WUAA searchers finally found her in May of last year. The wreck is remarkably well preserved, with parts of the deck and gear still visible. Well, just a few lakes over to the left, researchers uncovered another impressive thing. At the bottom of Lake Mendota, near Madison, Wisconsin, researchers found 11 ancient canoes. They believe the oldest of the canoes dates all the way back to 2500 BCE. Now, if you don't get why that's important, it's because you're thinking with today's head. If in a classic Midwest highway you see a bunch of pickups, then back in the ancient days you see only canoes. They were the main mode of transportation for indigenous cultures. They were used to fish in deep waters, trade goods, and travel long distances. The reason why scientists were so excited with this discovery is because they had never found any proof of what canoes were being used for in this region back then. And to understand the local cultures that inhabited the area during this time period, they needed to have some information on that. This exciting discovery was announced by the Wisconsin Historical Society in May 2024. The first canoe, which they believe is around 1,200 years old, was pulled from the lake in 2021. Then a second one was dug up in 2022. And now divers have found at least 11 more canoes along what would have been an ancient shoreline, long since submerged. One theory is that these canoes were intentionally sunk to keep them from freezing or warping in winter. It's possible people stored them in the same spot for generations. Or maybe this is just a small part of a much bigger settlement. Historians do believe there could be an ancient village hidden under the water of the lake. Divers have already found stone tools, like net sinkers used for fishing, but the village itself hasn't been located yet. Truth is, while the Great Lakes often steal all the thunder, scientists point out that smaller lakes like Mendota have stories too. The Wisconsin Historical Society is working closely with Native nations to piece together more about the lake's history. You'll need to believe me when I say there is a third Stonehenge, all the way under the waters of Lake Constance, Switzerland. I mean, think of it like Stonehenge's cousin. Archaeologists began to discover this back in 2015, when they found a line of 170 man-made stone cairns under the lake. Scientists say this was most likely the work of several villages, and that the cairn site was probably used for some collective purpose because, well, the formations are huge. Some of them are several dozen feet wide, and they can build up to 6 feet. The most amazing discovery so far is that the site dates back to around 5,500 years ago, so around the time the original Stonehenge was being built. Some of the facts that link them together are their construction dates, as well as the distinct characteristic of stone monuments built in a circular format. Scientists don't know much about this site yet, but hey, I see a pattern manifested all over the world, don't you?
Over the years, archaeologists have uncovered all kinds of stuff on runestones: curses, poems, protective magic spells, and even inheritance disputes. However, a newly uncovered ancient Norse artifact known as Svingerud stone has just one word on it. Sounds boring, right? Well, think again, because this might just be the oldest runestone ever discovered, almost 2,000 years old. But that's not all. Excavations are still ongoing, and depending on what follows next, it could unravel secrets and the true meaning behind the mysterious magical runes. So let's explore and see just how much known history you can rewrite with only one engraved word on a stone. A long time ago, during the first few centuries of the Common Era, Scandinavians and Romans crossed paths. They traded goodies like glass and silver, and eventually, Roman customs and even written culture ended up north. The Nords liked the Roman alphabet but wanted their own letters copyrighted, so they decided to create their own unique characters, which they called runes. Almost 20 centuries later, in 2021, archaeologists were excavating an Iron Age burial site near the village of Svingerud in eastern Norway. Among the cremation graves, they uncovered a reddish sandstone slab that would become a centerpiece in a major Norwegian archaeological discovery. It's the size of a coffee table, measuring just over 12 inches across. The stone was found buried with burned bones and charcoal, part of an early cremation grave. The stone had runes engraved into it, looking rough and shallow, like they were scratched with the tip of a knife or something needle-like. Runestones are not unusual. Archaeologists are used to uncovering runic inscriptions, especially in this region. However, tests show that both the burial site and the carving on the stone likely date back to somewhere between the 1st and 3rd centuries. That places it deep in pre-Viking history, centuries before the Viking Age officially began around 800 CE. That makes it one of the oldest reliably dated examples of early writing in Scandinavia. When you look at these carvings, they either look like magical symbols made to call on Nordic deities to help you, or like random scratches made by an angry man hitting a stone with something sharp. But these are real letters, crude but intentional. It's an ancient writing system used by Germanic tribes across Northern Europe. They were engraved into wood, bone, or stone. Their shapes are straight, angular lines because curves were tough to carve with the tools they had back then. When they met with the Roman Empire, rather than just borrowing Latin letters, the Germanic tribes took the idea of writing and carved out their own version. The original alphabet was called Elder Futhark. It had 24 letters. We can find them on artifacts dating from around the 2nd to the 8th century CE. Its name comes from its first 6 letters: F, U, Th, A, R, and K. Each rune probably had a name that matched the sound it made. For example, the rune that sounds like A was called Anzus. However, nobody from back then left us a memo explaining the names. In fact, the knowledge of how to read them was forgotten until 1865, when Norwegian linguist Sophus Bugge deciphered them by comparing clues. He examined later rune alphabets and ancient poems that referenced the runes, like a detective sketching a suspect from scattered witness clues. For many runes, especially the oldest ones in the Elder Futhark, the meaning is still open to interpretation. They weren't common knowledge, which is reflected by the fact that only some 350 surviving inscriptions remain. This changed eventually when the Scandinavian language evolved from Proto-Norse into Old Norse, spoken by mighty Vikings. The Elder Futhark was reduced from 24 to 16 runes to reflect the changes in the language, thus becoming the Younger Futhark, which was far better spread. Runes weren't really used to write books or keep daily records. Instead, you'd find them carved on gravestones, weapons, and various tools. It's believed that people used runes to show ownership, honor loved ones who had passed away, leave short messages, or sometimes for protection or magic. In the early days, some runes probably had special spiritual or ritual meanings too. One interesting fact about runestones specifically is that they were often used for self-promotion or boasting, like an ancient social media status or a tweet posted on a wall, or better said, a stone. One such example of a runestone from the 11th century where a man named Vigmund had it carved for himself, calling himself the cleverest of men. He even added that he was a ship captain, and yes, he made sure everyone knew that while he was alive. In the Old Norse poem Havamal, Odin says he hung on the world tree for 9 nights, pierced by a spear, to gain knowledge of the runes. This goes to show just how powerful and mystical those symbols were perceived to be. It's fitting that the word rune comes from a Proto-Germanic word which can be translated as secret or whisper. There's a common saying about power being in words, and for the old Germanic tribes, that power felt like actual magic. It's also why it's important to know when this magic came to be. And the Svingerud runestone tells us that. But it's not just when it was written, it's also what's written on it, where and why. The location where the Svingerud stone was discovered is already a significant archaeological site. It's famous for its incredible discoveries, including the remarkable Jormungbu helmet, the only Viking helmet ever found in Norway. The stone was placed in a cremation pit, alongside the remains of an adult and a few personal items. Thanks to charcoal and bone samples, researchers can figure out how old the runestone is by using a method called radiocarbon dating. The Svingerud stone isn't the first ancient Norse artifact with runes that archaeologists have discovered, not even close. People carved runes into all sorts of everyday objects like combs, jewelry, and knives long ago. Some of those might even be just as old. Other finds have runes, but they're often broken, loose, or don't have clear dating. However, with radiocarbon dating, scientists have confirmed that the Svingerud stone is really the oldest runestone ever found. The writing on it suggests that it was part of a ritual and might have even been a message to the deceased. The inscription isn't long. It's just one word, Idiburg. No one knows exactly what it means. The clearest part says Idibera, and most researchers agree it's probably a name. Maybe Idibera in a genitive form, meaning of Idibera or belonging to Idibera. So this could be the name of the person buried there or someone being honored. There's a decent chance it's a female name, possibly making this the earliest known female rune inscriber in history. But researchers now believe that the Svingerud runestone is a part of a bigger monument. They found more than a dozen sandstone pieces scattered across several graves at the site, and when they assembled them in the lab, they fit together like a puzzle. This suggests they all came from one single upright stone. The main piece with the inscription was found in one grave, but other similar pieces were buried in nearby cremation pits. Archaeologists think it was broken and reused in a ritual, maybe to connect different people or generations who had been buried there. Instead of just marking one grave, it might have first been a memorial and was later put back into the other graves as a symbolic act. Some even speculate that the runes might have been carved by different hands throughout various time periods. The Svingerud stone might be small, but as the oldest runestone ever found with a secure archaeological context, it could be the key to how writing first took root in Northern Europe. This Norwegian archaeological discovery proves that runes were already tied to ritual, memory, and maybe even women. And if it's just a fragment of a larger monument, we've only seen part of the picture. Ancient Norse artifacts like this reshape what we know about pre-Viking history. And with luck, more runestones will follow, maybe even from another female rune inscriber. Deep beneath the soil in Scotland lies one of the largest Neolithic stones ever discovered. If it had been left above ground, it might have drawn more visitors than Stonehenge. But something strange happened. After excavating it, the archaeologists chose not to display it. Instead, they reburied it for good. Whatever they felt, whatever they saw, it was enough to seal the stone back into the earth. Why though? I mean, we know Neolithic people drew and carved warnings and important pieces of information on stone. That's why the Cocknose stone was so intriguing when it was first discovered. It all began with Reverend James Harvey, a local minister who stumbled upon this enormous slab back in the 1880s near Clydebank, just outside Glasgow, Scotland. The stone was a typical sandstone, like the ones you'll find in Stonehenge. But it was a smooth type of sandstone that worked as a canvas. When Harvey found the rock, it was covered in swirling rings, deep grooves, and strange cup-like markings. Harvey must have recognized right away that this was no ordinary rock. It was a message from thousands of years ago. As a matter of fact, it was a message straight from 3000 BCE. Cockno means little cups in Gaelic. The ones who named it were literally describing what they were seeing, rings upon connecting rings. These drawings have sparked so many theories. Some experts see them as the earliest forms of written language, like abstract codes that predate words. And then there are those who think the stone holds a map of the sky, a way for Neolithic people to track the sun, moon, and stars. Like the pyramids of Giza, which some people believe are hauntingly aligned with the constellation of Orion. The cups and markings on the Cocknose stone could be aligned with some special constellation. The most bizarre theory is the one that says the stone was used as a portal. One of the scientists says that locals believed that the drawings could indicate this was a place to be reborn, a place where people could sink into the earth, only to be born again. In this life or in the afterlife. If that were true, maybe that's why they hid it, right? Not quite. In the 1930s, an archaeologist named Ludovic Mann heard about the rock and decided to visit it. This guy had an unusual idea and decided to take paint to the site and paint over the markings on the stone's surface. His weird idea had a deeper meaning though. He was trying to connect the dots, literally, and see if the stone worked as an ancient astronomical chart. He thought the carvings might predict solar and lunar movements, even eclipses. Some say that actually what man did was vandalize the slab of stone. That's maybe why archaeologists decided to rebury the stone back in 1965. They noticed markings of graffiti and erosion from the climate and agreed that it was best kept safe under the ground. The Cocknose stone stretches roughly 43 feet by 26 feet. That's almost the size of a bus. What sets the Cocknose stone apart from other slabs of rock is how clear and complex its carvings are. Many scientists call it one of the best examples of this prehistoric art in all of Europe. The patterns that show up there can also be found at various Neolithic sites across Europe and beyond, such as Greece, France, Australia, Spain, Italy, and much more. They all share similar cup and ring markings. To be clearer, this type of prehistoric art is also known as a petroglyph. Petroglyphs are carvings made by prehistoric people right into the surface of rocks. Instead of using paint, they chipped, scratched, or pecked at the stone to create images like animals, symbols, spirals, or scenes from daily life. Yet despite all the attention, no one has cracked the code on the Cocknose stone. Instead, this is what happened. For a while, it rested quietly beneath the soil until it was dramatically unearthed back in 2016. I say dramatically because this decision shook the archaeological community. Archaeologists from the University of Glasgow decided to reopen the site to study the rock once again. But this time, instead of exposing it to the elements, they used drones and high-tech 3D scanning to capture every groove and swirl with shocking detail. The team created a digital replica so precise it could be studied without ever touching the real thing ever again. This new approach gave hope that one day the Cocknose stone might finally reveal its secrets, or at least help us understand what Neolithic people thought was worth carving into stone and hiding beneath the earth. But this digital resurrection came with a price. The real stone vulnerable after centuries underground, had to be buried once more, shielded from the various hands and, let's face it, smelly feet of the modern world. Now, the Cocknose stone sleeps once again beneath the Scottish soil. Something needs to be clear here is that although researchers haven't decoded the symbols on this rock yet, they do know one thing. Neolithic rock art was a powerful form of communication and spirituality for ancient communities. These carvings were carefully etched onto rocks, scattered across hills, grazing lands, and near water sources. They likely served practical purposes such as marking important locations or guiding seasonal movements, but their significance went far beyond that. For Neolithic people, these carved stones were deeply spiritual, acting as connections to ancestors, natural forces, and sacred landscapes. The rocks carried meaning as part of a larger relationship between people and their environment. They helped turn the landscape into a living map of both everyday life and spiritual belief. That's probably why we find it all over the world. On the subject of mysterious rocks, we need to talk about these petroglyph-filled rocks that also actually sing. I want you to meet the Kupgal petroglyphs, which are located in Bellary district of Karnataka, India. This Neolithic or Stone Age site was first discovered in the late 1800s, lost, and then rediscovered in the early 21st century. These petroglyphs were carved into the dark surface of dolerite rock. Different from the soft and tender sandstone, the dolerite rock is a hard, dark volcanic rock formed from cooled magma. This fascinating rock art focuses mainly on cattle, specifically the long-horned humped variety we still see in the region today. These aren't just random doodles. Some of the cattle are drawn solo, while others appear in scenes facing off against each other, being ridden by human-like figures or surrounded by people with bows and arrows, maybe representing hunting or capture. Beyond cattle and humans, there are a few other animals like elephants, tigers, deer, and some abstract symbols like dots, ladders, or footprints. But there aren't big narrative scenes. The most interesting thing here is that Kupgal, apart from being visually expressive and super important, also sings. Among its most unique features are the so-called rock gongs. These rock gongs are boulders with natural cup-like depressions that ring out like bells when they're struck with smaller stones, often called a hammer stone. What happens is that instead of emitting a dull thud, the rock sings. It's like Earth's own xylophone. This is a real phenomenon that can also be found in other parts of the world. These so-called musical rocks emit resonant metallic tones that can be heard for hundreds of feet. Most rocks, when you hit them, don't produce sound because they absorb energy. But certain types of rocks, usually the harder ones, are more dense and at the same time elastic enough to vibrate when they're struck. In many ancient cultures, sound was used for more than mere entertainment. For many cultures, sound was used as a bridge to the divine. So researchers suggest that these gongs might have been used in spiritual ceremonies and gatherings.
Take a look at these stones. They seem ordinary at first glance, just ancient slabs, ruins of some buildings. However, unlike many other archaeological finds, this one is among the most mysterious and unique. Here's why. These stones are the remains of a large temple complex called Puma Punku, located in Bolivia. Scientists aren't certain, but it's likely that Puma Punku was built by the Tiahuanaco Empire, which existed between 300 and 1000 CE, before the Inca Empire. There is no information suggesting that this civilization had advanced building technologies. Moreover, they might not have even had a writing system. Every stone was carved and polished with astonishing precision. They fit together perfectly, like pieces of a puzzle. The craft is so refined that not even a razor blade can pass between the stones. Quite impressive for people who lived around 1500 years ago. And these stones are heavy. The largest ones weighed around 130 tons. So, how did the builders transport such weight from one place to another? Scientists suggest that this civilization did not know about the invention of the wheel. So, how did they manage to build such a perfect engineering structure? Did Tiahuanaco have the knowledge and tools for stonework? Or did someone else build Puma Punku? There are several theories about this. Theory 1. There was some advanced civilization that came to South America, interacted with Tiahuanaco, built this engineering marvel, and then left. Theory 2. Some beings from another planet came to Earth, showed humans how to build perfect structures, and created Puma Punku. This theory is dubious. Another idea from this series suggests that Puma Punku was built by mythological creatures from the South American culture at that time. Theory 3, the most likely one. There is no mystery here. Tiahuanaco was indeed an advanced civilization with incredible building technologies. So, what do you think? Okay, we've seen some pretty rectangular stones used for building a temple. How about perfectly round stones for studying the starry sky? Or for some other purpose, it doesn't matter. So, welcome to Costa Rica. In the south of this country lies the so-called decaspheres. These are large, heavy, round stones created in the pre-Columbian era, around 600 CE. Now, each stone is made from a unique type of rock formed from cooled magma. In other words, someone waited for a volcanic eruption to end and for all the magma to cool, and then took all this material and carved these spheres from it. But how did they achieve such a perfect shape? Scientists suggest that people used small stones to grind and carve the cooled magma. Some specialists think that the stones were made for navigation. They could have indicated the way to certain places. Another theory claims that the deca squares were used for astronomy. No one knows for sure. We may never get the answer to this question because the people who knew the secret of the stones disappeared after the Spanish expansion. So, let's continue our journey. See these cobblestones? Archaeologists still don't know why they're arranged along a long stretch of desert crossing Jordan and Israel. These strange stones form a chain of lines 40 miles long and have been here since around 300 BCE. Because they were discovered by pilots during flights about 100 years ago, some call these stones kites. One of the more popular theories suggests that people placed these structures here to lure animals into a pit where they could be caught. Apparently, ancient hunters knew the behavior of local fauna well, and were sure the animals would somehow walk along these stones, ending up in an open area with a pit where hunters could easily do their work. Perfectly smooth rectangular and square stones, round stones, stone traps for animals. What's next? How about a stone canvas or stone painting? To see this ancient artifact, we'll travel to Glasgow, Scotland, where archaeologists unearthed a stone slab created about 5,000 years ago. It is called the Cockno Stone. The slab measures 43 by 26 feet, about half a basketball court. And this entire area is filled with strange swirling patterns that scientists call cup and ring marks. But what do they mean? As usual, scientists don't know for sure. But one theory suggests that the inscriptions on the stone are somehow related to astronomical phenomena, such as lunar or solar eclipses. Maybe it was a star map, or maybe people just wanted to create a work of art. In any case, there is another interesting fact related to the cup and ring marks. Scientists have found similar drawings in other prehistoric sites around the world. Okay, let's step away from mysterious stones and look at some other archaeological mysteries. Here is the approximate order of civilization development starting from 8000 BCE, according to scientists. First, people settle in one place and build a city or settlement there. Then they engage in agriculture, and after that, they build temples. But in 1994, archaeologists said, no, the order might have been different. What if people first built temples to worship higher mythical beings and only then built cities and engaged in agriculture? Let's go to Turkey, to the rural area of Göbekli Tepe, where in the mid-1990s, archaeologists discovered several stone pillars with carved animals on them. This ancient structure dates back to around the 10th millennium BCE. Now, this place is considered one of the oldest places of worship in the world. Most likely, it was built by semi-nomadic hunters who knew nothing about agriculture because it appeared in this region 5 centuries later. Now, scientists are wondering, is it true that such structures led to the settlement of the area? The answer to this question may help understand the mindset and development of humanity in many parts of our planet. So, would you like a scroll with the location of a treasure marked on it? You could say you already have one. Check it out yourself. Just Google the Copper Scroll Treasure. Download a high-resolution photo of the scroll and follow the instructions. Oops! The instructions are written in an incomprehensible language. Scientists have been trying to decipher this message since the scroll was discovered in 1952 in Qumran, and the answer is still not found. According to one theory, the scroll contains information about a large amount of silver and gold. But even if the treasure does not exist, this artifact is still quite interesting to study. It was created around 2,000 years ago, during the time when the Roman Empire ruled over the settlement of Qumran. Perhaps the local residents hid their valuables from the Roman legionnaires and left such a map for their descendants. When you approach this archaeological wonder, you won't notice anything. But if you rise into the air and look down at the ground, you'll see amazing patterns created by the people of the Nazca culture. This discovery is called the Nazca Lines. Pilots and passengers of commercial aircraft first noticed them in the 1920s and 30s during flights over Peru. These large drawings consist of geometric lines, complex images of animals, and whimsical figures. More than 2,000 years ago, people removed part of the surface soil of this land and created these patterns. But why? The Nazca Lines continue to captivate researchers and enthusiasts alike. Recent technological advancements, such as drone imagery and satellite mapping, have provided new insights into these enigmatic formations. Some researchers are now exploring the possibility that the lines serve multiple purposes, including communication with someone not from our world. And to some extent, this is true. Some scientists believe that the Nazca Lines were a ritual method for communicating with the deities of the Nazca civilization. Studying these archaeological wonders not only enriches our knowledge of the past, but also inspires us to appreciate the ingenuity and creativity of the human spirit.